Well, hello. This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Larry Rhodes, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
Today we're going to discuss prayer, witchcraft, and meditation. This is a call-in show, and while we go over a few announcements, we invite you to call now at the number on your screen, there, down in front, and get a pen and paper, because we'll be giving you an email address so that you could send us feedback after the show.
Happy hour with the Atheist Society of Knoxville is starting in about a half an hour down at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City in the former Spaghetti Warehouse building. Join us there if you'd like to for food, drink, and conversation. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table.
Okay. Well, activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee include a first and third Sunday morning lecture with lively discussion. Sometimes they're guest lecturers. Sometimes we kind of pick a topic and try to have an orderly conversation. And on the second Sunday afternoon of the month is book club. This month is 12 by 12, a one-room cabin off the grid and beyond the American dream.
Visit our websites for additional details, including times and locations of our meetups. And now we go to the news.
In the news. It looks like you're starting.
Okay. Write this down as it is, our last reminder for some free-thinking scholarships. The deadline is fast approaching. The Freedom from Religion Foundation's student essay contest must be postmarked by June 1st, 2011. There are 3 categories with scholarship prizes of up to $2,000 each.
Well, essay categories include the Herbert Bushong High School Senior Essay Competition, the Michael Hakim Memorial Essay Contest, and the Brian Bolton Graduate or Mature Student Essay Competition for graduate students and students age 25 and older. Visit ffrf.org and navigate to the Outreach and Events link and see the Student Scholarship Essay Contests for further information.
Last week we reported on the Rapture Countdown for Harold Camping and the people from Family Radio, citing biblical quotes and evidence, citing biblical quotes, evidence, end quote, of the dead in Christ rising into the air come the rapture, we issued a flying zombie watch. We now bring our Rapture Countdown to a close and report that the flying zombie watch has expired and the count is 0.
The count is 0.
No rapture, no earth-shattering earthquakes occurred, no flying zombies were observed. And we atheists think that will never happen.
All right, yep. So no zombies, flying or otherwise, were reported, unless it be the Walking Dead idea that the Bible is some sort of magic guide to the future. We suspect that Zombie Bible and his principal character, Zombie Jesus, will keep on feeding on our brains.
One of the good news of atheism is that we actually have a future. We don't have to worry about Jesus coming next week. We don't have to worry about zombies getting up out of the grave or God killing everybody on earth again. We have a view of the future where we actually can live for thousands of years. We look forward to the things progressing into the future and giving us, hopefully, something like Star Trek that would actually occur. The dogma of the Christian religion and many religions would say that, nope, the redemption is going to happen next week and it's over. And matter of fact, many preachers are preaching that from the pulpit every Sunday.
Yeah, the end of the world is imminent.
Yeah. Speaking of the Walking Dead, let's look into the website for Family Radio. Here it is on May 21st and most of May 22nd, the day after Judgment Day, the website. Yeah. Finally, after nearly a day of being dead and unchanging, they were resurrected into action and updated the site. Any apologies for perhaps causing some people concern, undue fright, some people quitting jobs, spending their life savings, and other life-disrupting changes? Nope. No apologies at all. Here we are at May 22nd, May 23rd, and May 24th, and no apologies yet.
No apologies have been issued. All right, well, once again, we invite viewers to call in and maybe tell us how they were harmed by this faith-based assertion, or maybe how people they know were harmed by this.
I've actually heard of one woman who sacrificed her son because of the upcoming rapture.
I saw a headline that said something to the effect that woman tries to kill family and self, but I was on my iPhone and my internet connection was so slow I couldn't read the rest of the article.
Right.
It was a little disturbing.
There are plenty of stories out there to that effect.
All right. Well, we did ask members of RAT and ASK to report on their experience of May 21st, and I got a little something in here from someone who we'll call C. He says, "I'm still here, and I'm guessing that no RATers have disappeared. Anyone else missing? I'm kind of disappointed since it seems that I can't go out and get that Mercedes left sitting driverless somewhere nearby. Even more disappointing is that those rapture people are still here. But I'm sure a new date will be set before long, so there's still a chance." All right, and then from a T. Here are some Herald Camping facts that I just collected off the web. Herald Camping made a similar prediction for September 6th, 1994. Of course, nothing happened that day. A giant earthquake was going to open every grave in the world. All the chosen will fly directly from their graves up into heaven. All the others will be laid on the ground to pollute the air. And they go on to say that the world is 13,000 years old. Today's date was chosen because it is supposedly 7,000 year anniversary after the flood, after Noah.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, happy anniversary. Those of us who are not raptured were going to see the ascension of those who were raptured. The rapture was to take place over a 24-hour period, and it was to take place at 6 p.m. everywhere. It's interesting. I think the time when the book Revelations was written, I'm not sure they'd even agreed that the world was round, much less that
time zones.
You'd have time zones. But hey, maybe God improves. So T continues. It's now almost 10 p.m. in his time zone. Sorry, he didn't know about this 6 p.m., so he failed to take a look. So maybe they were raptured up and he missed it. Apparently 200 million people were chosen for this privilege, which is only 10% of the world's Christian population. After that, the world will be consumed by fire and the entire universe will be destroyed.
What's funny, what would have been funny had people been raptured, but then Herald Camping not been raptured. That would have been funny.
Well, we don't know. Maybe there were 2 or 3 that were raptured, and Herald Camping is still sitting there.
Maybe Jesus came and he's still here. We never know. Maybe he's camping out in L.A. or something.
All right. Well, today's topic, though, is prayer, witchcraft, and maybe we'll touch on meditation.
And it is a call-in show. Call 215-2288 anytime now.
All right. Okay. Well, let's talk about a definition of witchcraft. I must admit, when I hear Christians railing against witchcraft, and I know about Wiccans, that I can't help but think that there's a lack of communication going on here. So I've got here, the word witch may be used by Christians to mean someone in league with the devil and who uses their power to harm people and property. And of course, the devil is a Judeo-Christian construct.
Yeah, but there's many other versions of witchcraft that include just demons. Calling upon a demon to do your work, do your bidding in the world. And
in fact, the connotation of the word demon may not be a negative one, whereas in Christian tradition, devil and demon has a negative connotation because it talks about harming people and harming property. All right. Well, there's another use by persons defining themselves as witches who are known as Wiccans. And they say that it is a specific neo-pagan religion. Its adherents are referred to as Wiccans, though the term witches or crafters is also used. I got this off of Wikipedia, and I was not aware of the crafters term. And it developed in England in the first half of the 20th century. Wicca was popularized in the 50s and 60s. It is typically a duotheistic religion, worshiping a goddess and a god who were traditionally viewed as some sort of a triple goddess and a horned goddess, I guess, or horned god. So there may be a little tie-in to the devil there and the horns that the Christians portray.
Just for clarity, we don't believe in either one of those. We don't believe in any gods or demons or angels or anything magical or supernatural, for those who may just be joining the show.
Yeah. They're all equally supernatural and therefore human constructs. All right. So this represented, in a sense, a return to paganism or polytheism.
Because basically all of these entities have powers of gods type of thing. They can manipulate the natural universe and cause miracles to happen, or just do magic.
Okie doke. Yeah, and I was going to say it involves ritual practice of magic, largely influenced by the ceremonial magic of previous centuries, often in conjunction with a broad code of morality known as the Wiccan Raid.
Not familiar with it.
Yeah, although it is not adhered to by all witches. I'm aware of the fact that in England, especially on the equinoxes and I think the solstices, there's a large neo-pagan community that turns up to participate in these, astronomical-based events, and there may be some, the justifiable historical connection to the previous pagan practices.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it.
Because it sure seems as if there is geometric alignments of those structures that are meant to create, interesting shadows and apertures aligning with the solstice and equinox, which, you've got to think must be, important in the sense that it's fair to call religious. All right. So we're going into all this to be clear that, of course, there's really two people using this word witch, and they often aren't even talking about the same thing, which is, it certainly is frustrating to be a witness to such pointless miscommunication.
Yeah. Well, I need to define magic, prayer, and witchcraft now.
Sure, yeah.
What would you define magic as? I think I could define the other two, but it's hard to put a label, put a definition around the word magic, because it can cover so much.
Well, I guess, we put on the slide overhead that, don't we really use them interchangeably?
Well, pretty much.
Except, of course, Christians, if you ask them, are most of them going to say that when they're practicing prayer, they're really trying to invoke magic?
No, they wouldn't, but it's always been surprising to me that they wouldn't see the relation between it. They're using a variety of words or chants, and especially in Catholic Church, chants and phrases to call upon a supernatural being to do their bidding in this world, whether it's God or angels or saints. It's still magic and would be found underneath the heading of witchcraft or magic.
And it's also ritualistic. There's
very.
I probably can even recite the Lord's Prayer because I've been exposed to it in a ritual setting, and it's this act of repetition that gives it it becomes enculturated as well. Whereas we don't think of the connotation of the word magic typically is more like parlor tricks, people who hide coins in their palm.
The day-to-day,
like
when they toss the word magic around, like I'm going to see a magic show, they're not talking about real magic, and nobody expects to see real magic at a magic show.
Well, Larry, you want to greet our caller here?
Well, you wanted to give the
I guess Jonas is, our screener's working on that.
Yeah, last week we didn't have a screener, so kind of easy to forget we do have one.
All right. Well, let's see. I guess part of why we want to talk about the Christian definition of witchcraft is to also talk about the terrible cost of human life that it has brought,
and still bringing.
And in fact, it occurs to me that we forgot to explain why today's subject is witchcraft, and that is that tomorrow is the anniversary of the beginning of the Salem witch trials. So right here. In the North America, people were tried and convicted and killed for practicing witchcraft, which of course we think means for no good reason whatsoever.
Yeah, one thing that we might want to bring to light is that the Salem witch trials, even though they were a major event and killed a lot of people in America, that was the beginning of the end of witch trials in the world. Because up till then, they've always had witchcraft. They've always had trials for it. They've always had people pointing fingers to each other, pulling people out of their houses in the middle of the night, burning them at the stake, and accusing them of all kinds of things.
All right, well.
But at the Salem witch trial, the governor at the time finally said there's no such thing as spectral evidence. We will have no more of that. And that was the end of it.
And amazingly enough, the conviction rate just dropped away.
It sure did.
Well,
do we have a phone call now?
No, apparently our caller didn't want to speak to us on air.
Melted away.
All right, but the phone number's there on your screen. Give us a call. Today we're going to talk about witchcraft and magic and the efficacy of prayer.
Since I mentioned already spectral evidence, should I go ahead and read the first part here?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I first learned about this by reading one of our favorite authors, Robert Ingersoll.
Yeah.
That's where I first heard the phrase and was actually shocked that it almost seems an oxymoron.
We just finished reading Ingersoll's book, The Ghost, or The Ghosts, plural, and it went into witchcraft quite a bit. It's an excellent read. I highly recommend it. This is a title page from the title page of The Cases of Conscience from Boston, 1693, by Increase Mather.
Increase Mather.
He was one of the major players in
the witch trials.
Much, but not all, of the evidence used against the accused was spectral evidence, or the testimony of the afflicted who claimed to see the apparition or the shape of the person who was already allegedly afflicting them. The theological dispute that ensued about the use of this evidence centered on whether a person had to give evidence to the devil for his or her shape to be used to afflict. Opponents claimed that the devil was able to use anyone's shape to afflict people, but the court contended that the devil could not use a person's shape without the person's permission. Therefore, when the afflicted claimed to see the apparition of a specific person, that was accepted as evidence that the accused had been complicit with the evidence. Increase Mather and other ministers sent a letter to the court. The Return of the 7 Ministers Consulted was the name of the letter, urging the magistrates not to convict on spectral evidence alone. Spectral evidence was later ruled inadmissible, which caused a dramatic reduction in the rate of convictions and may have hastened the ends of the trials. A copy of this letter was printed in Increase Mather's Cases of Conscience, published in 1693.
It's interesting to read about the Salem witch trials here in North America, and it kind of worked like this. If a person accused of witchcraft would turn in others, would admit to it and turn in others, none of them were killed. It was only the people who protested their innocence. In other words, people who said, "Yeah, I've not done any of this nonsense." In a sense, it was almost to deny that there could be witchcraft and this imaginary crime had been committed that caused genuine, honest people to be killed.
Right, and it was even worse in the medieval Europe, when the church was really had iron fist over most of Europe. If you wanted part of your neighbor's stuff, or maybe part of his land, you could point your finger at him and say, "Yeah, I saw him turn into a wolf last night," and the church would come to him. And how if your neighbor pointed at you and said that, and how could you prove that you weren't a witch? It's proving a negative. It's impossible to do. But the church will reward the person who made the accusation with part of their land, part of their possessions, and then the church, of course, got the rest of it. So there's a very definite physical part in this.
Yes.
Monetary part.
Greed and political ambition could fuel these things. According to Wikipedia, hundreds of thousands of people were killed over accusations of witchcraft.
Yep.
what was interesting is that it wasn't confined just to Catholic community or the Protestant community. Both communities were very active in this prosecution, and they both use this book whose name is Latin for something like Hammer of the Evildoers or Hammer of the Witchers.
Don't know that.
Malefice, Maleficorium, something like that. Once again, learned that from Ingersoll. And, it detailed procedures for how you were to essentially torture people to get confessions, and, what was considered, acceptable to do. You sent victims of this process were sent swimming, which, being underwater isn't exactly swimming.
Now, if your hands or feet are bound and they throw you in the water, that's not exactly swimming.
So do we have a call? We don't have a call. All right. Well, viewers, please give us a call. We've had a couple of false starts here.
Okay. And if you do call in, remember to mute your TV. There's like a 7-second delay from our broadcast. So turn down the TV and pay attention to the telephone.
All right. Well, there is this other evidence section here. Let's talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
Other evidence includes the confessions of the accused, the testimony of a person who confessed to being a witch, identifying others as witches, and the discovery of poppets, books or palmistry, and horoscopes, or pots of ointments in the possession of homes of the accused, and the existence of so-called witch teats on the body of the accused. A witch teat was said to be a mole or blemish somewhere on the body that was insensitive to touch.
You could stick a needle into it and it wouldn't bleed or wouldn't inflict pain on the person, and that was considered
evidence
against the person as being a witch.
Yes. The Wikipedia implied that officials wanting to convict their political opponents would, of course, use dull needles that wouldn't make pain. All right, and
I think dull needles would make more pain.
Depends on how hard you push, I guess. We're talking about this evidence here, and I lost the train of thought here.
The discovery of such insensitive area was considered de facto evidence of witchcraft. Although in practice the witch's teat was usually insensitive by design, with examiners using secretly dulled needles to claim that the accused could not feel the prick of a pin. You're probably right, they just weren't pushing it in.
Yeah.
But I read in Carl Sagan's book, A Demon-Haunted World, where in medieval Europe, the church would hire people that they call prickers, or I don't know, just pricks, which is doesn't have the same connotation, because these people would go around and they would be the official people to go around and prick the accused witch, and if they did not bleed or did not feel pain from this particular mole or whatever it was, then they would be paid several coppers. For every witch they found, they received a monetary reward. So they had a vested interest in finding witches, not finding innocents.
Well, the story about the Salem witch trials was brought into the mid-20th century by the famous playwright Arthur Miller in the dramatization, and the play is called The Crucible. It's fascinating to listen to, the dialogue and the development around the people involved in this. It began with some young children singing and dancing in the woods, which was somehow then referred to as if they were participating in
a ritual.
Ritual like those maybe Wiccan rituals. And then
in the moonlight, in the dark, in the moonlight, your eyes will play tricks on you anyway. You may think, especially if you're overexcited and expecting to see magical stuff, your eyes might actually convince you that you have.
Well, and then there's a kind of a racial bigotry thing that plays into it. There's a woman, Tituba, I think is her name, who was like the caregiver to these people, who was, and here the history books are a little vague. She may have been a Native American from Florida, but maybe somewhere from South America, who was essentially a slave, but then was was occasionally practicing, let's say, Native American medicine, which then gets interpreted as doing this witchcraft thing by the Christians. And so this story plays on this thing of, well, we've got these evil practices from the New World, from the natives here, that it's our duty to stamp out.
We can't have it. That their magic may be better than ours, so. Especially if their knowledge of native roots and stuff are better. They could cure more people than our prayers.
It might once again be because if it was effective, then it was a threat to their authority. Yes. But this play was written, of course, right during the time when the Senator McCarthy was holding hearings demanding that communists turn in other communists so that they could be purged from the government. And so the analogy was very apt, that people could sort of cleanse themselves by implicating others, and
or get rid of a long-time enemy by pointing their finger at him and saying he's a communist.
Rival.
That's it. That type of thing it's an anathema to a free and civilized government.
And of course, congressional hearings were happening again just recently to investigate the radicalization of American Muslims. And goodness, these people, the Muslims I know of are, they go to work and they pay their taxes and have studied to get citizenship, and yet we've got things like what we thought was happening in the mid-20th century or even in the late 1600s kind of happening again.
I was a political science major in college, and one of the things that they would tell us that would go on in politics is, if you don't have a lot of luck mobilizing your base, if you don't have a lot trying to get people to do the things that you want them to, you can invent an enemy. And then you can scare these people with the enemy and use fear to motivate them to do your bidding. And McCarthyism was a real good example of that. Some congressional king is trying to use the radicalization of American Muslims to get his bidding done, to get donations from his base. It's a common political ploy that you need to be aware of, so that they don't use it on you. Use your rational mind to try to see through the type of ploy that they would be doing using this.
And we say demonization because, of course, from the witch things, it was demons. Everyone was all upset about, there be demons.
They may not be actual demons, but they have demons in them.
All right.
Look, I'd like to touch on just for a second too, homosexual agenda. I mean, there's no such thing as a homosexual agenda unless it's to take over the world and make it fabulous. I heard that. But I mean, this is just another one of the ploys that the radical right want to use to motivate their base. There's no reason to be against homosexuality outside the Bible, other than maybe a yuck factor. But if you're of that bent, don't do it. But it's not hurting you in the least. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, in fact, if we drop off to the next page here in the next slide, we see that, of course, the family radio people are gay bashers as well. It says the gay pride is a sign of the end. So there's nothing new under the sun.
Target a group, make them the enemy, make people afraid of them, and you can get people to do your bidding and give you money.
Okie doke. Well,
we're at the mid break if you want to try to.
Yeah, we're at the mid program break. Let's talk about that. We want to identify our sponsors here. So if you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is jointly funded by these organizations and by individual contributions. We would like to thank anonymous contributors for support in memorial of BM. You can send feedback to us at the email address that will be shortly appearing on your screen. But don't wait. Call in. This is a live show. Today is May 24th, 2011.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville meets several times a month, and we have evening meetups for food, fun, and drink. Visit the Ask website on the screen or join us to find times and locations. You can come down immediately after the show tonight to Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City and the old Spaghetti Warehouse building. And everyone's welcome, anybody who's atheist or atheist friendly, but please don't come down to preach, proselytize, or poke.
That's right. All right, you won't find any witch spots on us.
Nope.
Okay. The Rationalists of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussion of topics such as what every atheist should know about the Bible, what is art, the evolutionary history of flowers, and thinking rationally about climate change. Once a month we get together for book club. Past books we have read include The God Delusion, The American Age of Unreason, and The Virtue of Selfishness. One of my favorites was Your Inner Fish, which is about
Your Inner Fish?
Well, paleontology and evolutionary biology. It was a great read. And okay,
sounds good. I'll have to read that one.
It looks like we've got a call here. Larry, you do the honors.
Okay. Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
I'm sorry?
May we have your name or a nickname,
Eric.
please? Gary?
Eric, E-R-I-C.
Eric. Okay. Did you have a comment or question?
I was just curious what the shirt is supposed to be for that you're wearing.
Nothing fails like prayer.
Yeah.
May is, you may know, the month where the National Day of Prayer is declared. Our Congress mandated that the President declare a National Day of Prayer. It's the first Tuesday of every month. The first Thursday of May every year. Mm-hmm. It happened again this year. Did you, by any chance, notice how the world changed so much for the better on the first Tuesday of May? I guess not.
I don't understand what the purpose is of you wearing that shirt. Like, what good does it do?
He's making a statement.
Well, we're making a statement here to challenge the efficacy of prayer and supernatural beliefs. Mm-hmm. And, the National Day of Prayer, did it really make a difference?
You want to tell them about the prayer challenge that we put out before the National Day of Prayer?
Yeah. Would you care to hear the prayer challenge?
If you want to, yeah, you can tell me.
Sure. So, people pray and, claim that they get healed from cancer, or that their prayers are answered when, the traffic light turns in their favor and they get to work on time. But we think that those are easy prayers, and the reason people make those prayers is that you really can't tell the difference. But we'd like to ask all Christians, all believers in the efficacy of prayer, to make this prayer. Prove to us that you're patriotic American and that you care about the men and women in our service, and we'd like that all those service personnel who've been injured in defense of our nation, lost limbs, eyes, had their brains damaged,
nerves shot,
mm-hmm. that those limbs will be restored. And we don't mean that by prosthetics, but real limbs. Mm-hmm. If God is going to cure cancer, if God's going to raise the dead, can't He restore limbs?
But
why is it that limbs are never restored? Will you make that prayer?
That's not what prayer is for, so no, I wouldn't.
Really? The Bible says that prayer can do anything.
Mm-hmm. I just think you don't really, I was talking to a buddy recently, and he explained it to me better, that prayer just kind of opens your mind up to things, and I'll give you one positive example. I'm clinically, or excuse me, I'm currently in school, and there was a lady at my clinical site. I'm training to be an LPN, and I really felt like she didn't like me, and I really started having bad feelings toward this person, and I prayed that God would just open my heart to see the good side of her. And I think that's what prayer does. It just makes you more open to the positive side of people. It's not like
that sounds more like the power
of lamp, hoping for God to answer all your problems.
Yeah, well, that sounds more like the power of positive thinking. In the Bible, it says that wherever two people get together and pray in His name, anything is possible. Even Jesus said you can move whole mountains with prayer. And I mean, look at all the faith healers that are taking everybody's money all around the world because they say that they can do it.
Though.
They aren't real Christians.
No, they're thieves. They're prophets.
I agree.
Well, we agree that they're thieves, but what they're doing is that they're using this idea that there's a supernatural that will intervene, an entity that will intervene supernaturally to practice that chicanery. Now, Eric, in your example, you spoke about how maybe you had this social problem with this person, and you wanted to change it. Well, please think about it. You and that other person are interacting, and you had desired to make the change, and a change happened. It seems pretty logical that it didn't require an outside entity to make that happen.
No, I'm not saying that I think it does. What I'm saying is I think that just using the actual prayer will actually make me think, maybe I shouldn't think this way about this person.
Well, what about meditation? You could have used meditation to the same purpose then. If you're not actually asking a supernatural being to do your bidding, then calming your mind, rethinking the situation, reconsidering the person's feeling, and having compassion would do the same thing. And it doesn't have this magical supernatural facet to it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I still like your version of prayer. I think that doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't put out the wrong message. I think it's a good idea when all the means and messages of prayer are out there. I think yours is a very good one.
Okay.
All right. May we ask, how did you find us?
I was just flipping through the channels and.
Have you seen us previously?
Freethought forum, and just thought it'd be interesting to call and just ask you about your T-shirt.
All right. Okay. Well, we're here every Tuesday from 5 to 6, so come back and join us.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you much. All right. Well, we hope other people call in. We have about 20 minutes left in the program.
Mm-hmm. We were about to get to the Camp Quest, I think. If you want to take a look at it. The Rationalists of East Tennessee support Camp Quest of the Smokies. It's a fun science summer school adventure. Visit the website on the screen or email us for more information about it. It's kind of like a secular alternative to Bible camp or church school during the summer, vacation Bible school. But they do learn a lot of critical skills. They learn critical thinking skills, and they actually, like on the screen, learn certain scientific things like how to extract DNA. Apparently, it's not that hard to do. You can do it even in the wild.
All right. I've attended a few of these Camp Quests. I typically brought a telescope, and if weather was favorable, we looked at the moon or Saturn. Mm-hmm. But one of the more fascinating times was when they conducted something they call Socrates Cafe, where Socrates Cafe is a thing that has proponents, and not merely for Camp Quest, but for adults as well, where perhaps at a place like Barley's, we would pose the question, what is virtue? And it was fascinating to listen to some of the youngsters struggle with questions
with words that they thought they knew,
and that we normally think of as relatively, adult concepts. Mm-hmm. I remember one youngster talking about he was defending the idea that it was important for people to have experienced, maybe on the receiving end, some bullying or being picked on, because it was going to develop compassion for their fellow human. I think that was one of the more profound moments, and there were definitely some youngsters in the group that didn't understand what he meant, and so there was back and forth, and they were teaching and learning from one another.
And no mention of religion in all of this.
No, they were struggling with the problems of life, just as Socrates so famously started a tradition of.
And to mention the Socratic method, I'm sure that they had a lot of questions just to be able to provoke an answer. And there's a lot of things. If you're talking to somebody and you'd like to get him to reach the same point that you would have just blurted to him anyway, you could have asked him questions to kind of guide that person to their own realization of what the answer is, without being obtuse or straightforward.
And another thing, though, is to make you examine the assumptions in your views. Socrates is famous for saying the unexamined life is not worth living, but that, and further, that if it was anything he knew more than other people, and I'm paraphrasing, it was how little he knew.
Right.
And that
he was hoping the person could enlighten him, and enlightening him, they really enlightened themselves.
As well, yes. All right. Well, we've been talking about witchcraft here, and I was wondering what Ingersoll might have to say that you had brought.
Okay. The facts upon this terrible belief, the belief in witchcraft, were proved over and over again in every court. Thousands confessed themselves guilty, which is amazing, admitting that they sold themselves to the devil. They gave the particulars of the sale, told what they said and what the devil replied. They confessed this, and when they knew that confession was death, knew that their property would be confiscated and their children left to beg their bread. This is one of the miracles of history, one of the strangest contradictions of the human mind. Without doubt, they really believed themselves guilty in many cases. In the first place, they believed in witchcraft as a fact. It was taught to them, even in the Bible. It says, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. If it's in the Bible, it's got to be real. Witches have to be out there for the Bible to say it, which is another reason why we can't believe the Bible nowadays. And when the church charged in, they probably became insane. And their insanity, and in their insanity, they confessed their guilt. They found themselves abhorred and deserted by their neighbors and friends and family, charged with a crime that they could not disprove. Like a man in quicksand, every effort only sunk them deeper. Caught in this frightful web, at the mercy of the spiders of superstition, hope fled. Nothing remained but the insanity of confession. The whole world seemed to be insane.
The insanity of confession. When I first read that, it kind of drove home the point that there would be this mass hysteria all around, and the reality that we live in today is so very different from that, and then the people who were convicted, especially in Europe, were killed in horrible ways. They were hung, they were burned alive.
And this very person may very well have been on the pointing end, or the shoulder end of the pointing finger in the past, and he knew exactly what was going to happen when somebody pointed the finger at him. And when they broke in the door to come after him, he knew what his choices were. Nothing.
Yeah.
Not anything. So the only thing to do is just to get it over as quickly as you could, and
in fact, there may have been an attempt to negotiate at least a less painful death. Here in North America, the accused witches were all hung except one person, and he didn't confess. Well, in fact, the people who were killed, none of them confessed. They were all people who were protesting their innocence. But there was one person who wasn't hung because he didn't enter a plea. And there's a different kind of punishment set aside for not entering a plea, and that was to be pressed to death. And it took him like 2 days to die, where it's like they put a board on him and they piled rocks on him until he couldn't breathe. but it was done slowly to, because the sadistic
nature of the church at the time. Well, think of all the torture devices that were developed by the church at the time. I mean, thumb screws, the Iron Maiden, the rack, the heated irons, all of this. And every last one of them was used on heretics, people who wouldn't believe as the church wanted them to believe, or like these people who thought had magical powers. In the time of James I, a man was executed for causing a storm at sea with the intention of drowning one of the royal families. How could he disprove it? How could he show them that he did not cause the storm? All storms were, at that time, generally supposed to be caused by the devil, the prince of the power of the air, and by those whom he assisted. So somebody had to start it. You would think that just about every storm that came up in sea, they'd find some scapegoat,
they'd have to be killing someone,
and throw him overboard or burn him or whatever. This is Ingersoll. I implore you to remember that the believers in such impossible things were the authors of our own creeds and confessors of faith. These are the very religious people.
Yes. Calvin, Luther. They would have been believers in this witchcraft thing, and they set about creeds saying you must believe these things, because to take away witchcraft and to take away the devil from Christianity, calls into question the truthfulness of the whole book.
Well, right. If it says that, even in the first book of the Bible, nowadays people believe that the serpent was Satan. If you say Satan wasn't real, that collapses even the first intro to the Bible. It says a woman was tried and convicted before Sir Matthew Hale, one of the great judges and lawyers of England, for having caused children to vomit crooked pens. She was also charged with having nursed devils. The learned judge charged the intelligent jury that there was no doubt as to the existence of witches, and that it was established by all of history and expressly taught by the Bible. So here again, we have a very learned man, high in his rank of his society, saying witches are real. We've got to believe it because the Bible says it's real.
Yeah, to challenge that then undermines the authority of the whole book, the authority of the church, and of course in that day and age, the government power claimed to be resting upon the will of God as well. To this day, the coins in England and in Canada, talk about the Queen by grace of God. It's in Latin. That's a real break that we have from that kind of mindset with the establishment of our country.
No divinely inspired leader, or not divinely appointed leader, is in charge of our country. We've got away from those. 10 minutes left in the show, 215-2288. We still have time to take a call. We're talking about prayer, witchcraft, and meditation. We haven't talked much about meditation.
Haven't talked much about meditation. Yeah. Well, meditation, I know, is something that's promoted by an author who's real important to the secular community, Sam Harris. He believes that meditation is a worthwhile pursuit because I guess it's a learned calming of the mind that he feels is very beneficial.
He feels that, like a lot of people, that there are frontiers of the mind that are unexplored, and the way to do that is to turn inward, and the way to facilitate that is through meditation. So I could agree with him on certain things, but when you come in and you explore your inner self and you learn, you examine it, who's to tell you whether your mind is not playing tricks on you at that time? There's a lot of problem with that. It's all subjective.
Issue of evidence or not.
It's subjective visualization of the.
And there's certainly another one of these opportunities where we may have a semantics issue that, just like the Christians when they talk about witches and the Wiccans when they talk about witches, they aren't talking equals to equals. If meditation is quiet time and introspection, or is it of a kind of a typical nature, like you do to wind down the evening, maybe with as an alternative to reading a book, or is it maybe prolonged periods of more severe isolation? Sam Harris did make an interesting point. He talked about speaking with, I think I'm getting this right, the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, but not nearly so opposed to modern science as Christian tradition is.
Matter of fact, he's got a famous quote. He says, "So where science is found to be true, so is Buddhism found to be false." In other words, he's making a statement saying that we believe this stuff, but science is the best way of finding truth about the universe in a physical sense. Of course, it doesn't mention the spiritual sense. But where he's saying, any claims made about the natural world come in conflict with scientific findings, he said, Buddhism would lose.
Yeah. In other words, he's realizing that there's a written story tradition that has to take backseat to a modern understanding. Sam Harris makes a point I'd like to finish with, that the Dalai Lama was asked, well, if we could develop techniques to allow people to achieve the benefits of meditation more readily without the years of training, would that be a good idea? And the Dalai Lama said, yes, of course. Sure. In other words, he didn't want, he was honest to say, well, if we're after this benefit, we don't have to claim that we've got a monopoly on the only way to get there.
Right. And I use the word lose as far as, Buddhism would lose if we found out that science was right about a certain thing. He didn't mean it that way, and I'm sure that he didn't use that word. He was saying that they would both be winners because they would both gain knowledge about the world. The stories of the Dalai Lama and Buddhism would have to take a backseat to the learning of modern science, but both of them would come out better because of that.
And in fact, of course, the Renaissance, the rebirth of knowledge and inquiry into the universe around us often began with pious Christians who genuinely wanted to understand the world, which they believed authored by God. And they made progress, of course, when they were willing to say that the book is wrong because it is contradicted by the universe around us.
And to be fair, most people, when they go into a religion, if they do it of their own free will, they are seeking truth. They are trying to find what is real. They come into the religion believing that God is real, and they want to find out more about it. They want to find out the truth of Christianity or Buddhism or Islam or whatever. And to that is to their credit. Yes. They are seeking truth. However, at some point they stop asking questions because the people who are already in the religion tell them to stop. They're getting negative feedback from the people around them and the religious leaders saying that the questions are inappropriate. And you shouldn't question God, even though you're not questioning God, you're questioning the religious leaders.
The Bible and the leaders,
yes.
Yes.
All right.
And in fact, we ourselves know many atheists who became atheists because they wanted to understand deeper what was the assertions of religion.
Dan Barker was a preacher who went to school to learn more about, he went to divinity, to learn more about the Bible and more about the message and more about the truth of Christianity. But the more he got into it, the more he found was not true. And he persevered to find the truth. And it led him right out of Christianity on into deism, and then after that into atheism.
And I know that we have members of ASK and RAT who have similar stories, that they were going to the Johnson Bible College, for instance, and upon reading all of the Bible found that there were things in there that were morally unacceptable, reprehensible to them, that shook their faith, and then they were able to finally ask questions about, well, what is likely to be reality?
Right.
I guess, so at least for some people, finding the morally reprehensible parts of the Bible and coming to grips with it and and having a strong enough moral foundation themselves that they had to reject it makes the difference.
Right.
It is a problem for people who fully accept the Bible, that when some of those morally reprehensible passages can give them permission to do things that that will be bad for themselves and their loved ones.
Right, like the passage for killing homosexuals, or your wife who tries to take you to worship other gods. The Bible tells you to kill her, and you look at that and say, well, I'm in a mixed marriage and she really wants me to go with her religion. Are you really going to take up a stone and kill her, like the Bible says? A lot of people believe that the New Testament is a new covenant with God, and the Old Testament doesn't really apply. But then what about the Ten Commandments? What are we going to do with the Ten Commandments and the other 500 or 600 commandments that go along with it? There's not just 10, by the way. If you really want to find out what God commands, go read all 600 of the commandments. But it's just a work of fiction. It's a work from the earliest civilizations of man.
And it's the unfortunate fact is that once it got written down, it gets treated as this unquestioning truth, and you get this awkward thing then of people wanting to try and move beyond it. But there's this problem that happens with churches that maybe the pastors would want to move beyond it, but the parishioners hold them back.
Right.
Maybe the parishioners want to move beyond it, and the pastors hold them back. So progress is slowed.
It's a irrational dichotomy that a lot of Christians have to carry in their mind, like hearing all their life that God is good and loves His people and wouldn't want anything bad to happen to them. But then they've read the Bible and they know that God would drop pestilence and disease on His people at the drop of a hat. He wiped out the whole world. He doesn't mind taking sacrifices, and even asked someone to kill his own son, Abraham. I mean, things like that. That's an irrational dichotomy. God is good, but then He does all this stuff, which is right, but you have to keep them in your mind and keep them as truth, because the Bible won't let you change your mind.
Well, at times, of course, the Christians will claim that, well, it's the devil doing this. But if you clearly read your Bible, you'll see that God plans for upcoming famines. God knew that there was going to, if the Bible be true, God knew there was going to be a famine in Canaan, and He sent the Israelites down to Egypt to escape that famine and then be slaves for a while, from which He was then going to pluck them back.
And how many people did He kill with plague just because one of His people didn't do a proper census? Any 70,000 people, something died?
Well, there are two episodes of David doing a census. In one, he's inspired by God to take a census and then punished. And in another, he's inspired by the devil to take a census. It looks like they've written about the same event twice, but then details are changed because
you can't have a contradiction.
Well, the authors have... Well, there are different authors who've massaged the story. All right, well, we're coming up on the last minute of the program here.
It's about time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. Freethought Forum is produced by the members of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. We're live every week at this time from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. If you'd like send us some feedback, please do so at the email above. And you can join us right after the show if you'd like to, down at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City. Okay, you can call in this station and purchase copies of this DVD and past Freethought Forum programs. This has been Freethought Forum. I'm Larry. And I'm Faithless Forrest. We'd like to thank Sam, who's manning the camera system, and Jonas for the phones, and have a good day.